Hello again, everybody. It is time for the Silver Bullets podcast. I am Michael Citro. Welcoming back
Chip Minnick.
Chip, we missed you last week. I know we had to get Tony Gerdeman in here to fill in. I think we got about 12 more payments to make on his contract, and then we'll be free and clear. We appreciate you coming back and saving us some money.
I'm grateful to Gerd, even though we did exceed our budget of, only red M&Ms and some of the other things, the outrageous items that he demanded in his contract at the last minute. But I'm grateful to Gerd. I'm grateful to you. Just a quick note to our listeners. Michael was kind enough to say that there were some family issues, and my mother-in-law is very ill. Last week we thought that we were going to lose her, but I can tell you that she is still with us, and kind of, right now we're just kind of hoping for a peaceful journey, because it's been very difficult for my wife and my sister-in-law. So I thank you, I thank Gerd, I thank any and all of our listeners who may have had any concern, and I'm genuinely appreciative.
Well, we of course hope the best for you and your family, and we were able to muddle through. I think it was Gerd's probably his first podcast that he's ever done.
I could tell.
I thought he did pretty well for his first time out.
Yes,
and yeah, I think it's funny because I think was when I was on Sons of Schmidt, I think it was Brandon Zimmerman who told me, he said I've been trying to get you and Gerd on the same podcast, and I was like, okay, well, here it is, it's happening.
There you go.
It was a lot of fun. I like talking to Tony, and actually that's the first time we exchange chats online all the time, but that's the first time we've actually spoken to each other.
Yeah, it was an enjoyable show. I'm grateful to the both of you. Thank you, Gerd, for filling in for me on the last minute, especially considering it was Christmas Eve. I hope, Michael, you had an enjoyable Christmas with your family, and I hope all our listeners did as well.
Yeah, it was very low key for me. I like to just keep things quiet, but we'll be staying in for New Year's. So anyway, enough of the procrastination. We do have to talk about the football game, which happened Saturday night, and it unfortunately was the end of the 2019 Ohio State football season. I think it was a. I will start by saying it was a great, phenomenal season for the Buckeyes. I'm not one of those people who thinks it's a national championship or the worst season ever. I think there are very, very many degrees in between, and I think it was a fantastic football season. It probably still ended a bit prematurely, and we'll talk about the reasons why that happened. But I think that in the end, obviously Gerd on our show is just bad luck.
There you go. We have to find the culprit, and he's as likely as any. I completely agree with you. I think that it was painful the way it ended, but I'm one of these people who, you have to enjoy. I try to enjoy the ride for all of its aspects, the good and the bad. And I know we're going to talk about the game in greater detail, but it was a tremendous season. It's a shame the way it ended. Obviously wish that Ohio State was still playing, because certainly they showed the country that they were certainly capable of doing so and worthy of doing so. But it was a tremendous inaugural season by Coach Ryan Day. He has nothing to be ashamed of or embarrassed of. The coaching staff, the players, everybody, they provided Ohio State fans like you and me a treasure trove of memories that I know, speaking for myself, that I'm going to cherish for a good long while, especially with the winter looming and no college football on the horizon for several months.
Mm-hmm. Well, Chip, it looked like when things kicked off that it was going to be one of those really great nights for Ohio State. They came right down the field, but they did bog down and have to kick a 21-yard field goal to start the game. Still, that's a pretty good start to the game for the Buckeyes, and Then the defense, got the stop, and they came right down the field. And before you knew it was 10-0. J.K. Dobbins went 68 yards for the touchdown, one of two 60-plus yard runs on the night for J.K. And things looked good at the end of the first quarter. It was 10-0 Buckeyes, and the defense was holding up against a very good Clemson offense. The offense was able to move the ball, and things felt pretty good.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as soon as you said, J.K. Dobbins, as soon as he took off on that lengthy touchdown run, it kind of felt like, okay, here was a big part of the winning recipe, so to speak, falling neatly into place at the onset of the game. Those big runs that we have grown accustomed to watching J.K. Dobbins rip off throughout the 2019 season. If you had said to me that, okay, things would not turn out positively for Ohio State at that time, like you said, that 10-0 lead over Clemson, I would never have believed you.
Now, the second quarter is where you started to get a sense that things were not quite clicking as well as they should click for the Buckeyes in the second quarter. They did get another scoring drive together, but this one was another short field goal from Blake Hobbill to make it 13-0, and this was one of those where it really should have been a touchdown. There was a pass to J.K. Dobbins. He just couldn't. I think that was the one that he couldn't. He had trouble getting to it and couldn't hold on to it as he made contact with the ground. It was a very tough catch. It was a little bit of a line drive throw by Justin Fields rather than put a little bit more air under it, and they had to settle for the field goal. The takeaway for me from those first two field goal drives is that once they got inside the 10, the Buckeyes ran the ball twice and threw the ball 4 times. And I didn't think to that point that Clemson had shown they could stop J.K. Dobbins consistently.
Yeah, it was very ominous that Ohio State throughout the course of that game, when it came to within the red zone, that was the one thing that, when I look back on the events of Saturday evening, the red zone inability of the offense is something that's gonna linger throughout the offseason.
Mm-hmm. So again, they come down the field after a 3-and-out, forced a punt, came right down the field again. This time it was a dropped pass by Dobbins, and this one was on Dobbins. This was a well-thrown ball. It was nice and soft for him. He had Ryan Day called the absolute perfect play on this for the defense he got, because J.K. Dobbins could have done any number of things. He could have done cartwheels into the end zone. He could have walked backwards into the end zone. He had one Clemson Tiger out there, multiple blockers. It was an easy touchdown. All he had to do was catch the pass, and he did not.
He started running before he actually had it. I mean, it's something that you see, and unfortunately, like you said, it was just it was the perfect play call at the right time. Ohio State just failed to capitalize on it.
It was. Here's the thing about J.K. Dobbins too, is he's been such a reliable receiver that once I saw the play unfolding and I saw Fields throw the ball out there, I looked down the field, like I looked to the right on my television screen to see what was in front of him. I just assumed he caught the ball. It was like it took me a second to go, oh man, he dropped it, because when I saw what he had in front of him, he had a touchdown. And Dobbins being on the field and in the moment, and as hard hitting and as the game was to that point, and as amped up as you are, he doesn't know that he's got all that room. So he takes the peek, takes his eye off the ball for just a half a second too early, and it's an incomplete pass and a field goal rather than a touchdown. And really, the red zone problems, people were crediting Clemson for being tough in the red zone, but those plays were there to be made. I mean, those were two passes that should have been touchdowns to J.K. Dobbins. One was on Fields, one was on Dobbins, and that's not Clemson stopping Ohio State. That's Ohio State stopping Ohio State.
I completely agree. I mean, like I said, that was just one of many frustrations throughout the entire evening, the red zone inability to come away with touchdowns versus field goals.
Mm-hmm. And you know, I missed saying this. You know, the second field goal drive was set up by a 68-yard touchdown run where Dobbins was tackled by a shoestring and barely went down. I mean, talk about a game of inches. If he's 1 inch more forward with his foot, he's scoring on that, you know, 60-plus yard run rather than falling down inside at the 8-yard line.
Right. I mean, and who really thought that he was going to get caught from behind? I mean, I certainly didn't. You know, it just was not meant to be.
Yeah, it was tough. He had a guy come on behind him with some good speed and swipe at the ball, and I think just in that one little moment of moving the ball forward, I think it just threw a stride off just enough to allow the second guy to get there, and it was tough because you always go, oh well, you know, it's first and goal, that's good, but there's always that little nagging voice in the back of your mind going, oh, if he would have scored there, they wouldn't still be having to score. You know, it would already be over. Right. So, and really, you wonder if he scored there, it's 17-0 instead of 13-0. You wonder if the game is over at that point.
I know. I mean, psychologically, that's what you kind of think that, you know, like it just was in the back of my mind. It was lingering that we're allowing Clemson to stick around by kicking the field goals, and like I said, it just wasn't meant to be.
So Clemson gets the ball down 16-0 in the second quarter, and Ohio State gives up a couple of first downs. And then on the next series, they make a stop on first, they make a stop on second. Third down comes up, big sack by Shaun Wade. Everybody's happy. We're getting the ball back, up 16-0 already. The offense has had no trouble. And then we go to a booth review for targeting. And this chip is the play that changed the entire game.
I agree, and it was the type of thing where I mean, you just can go on and on and on about how it was, you know, like the national media in the days since the game concluded have tried to spin this as, okay, you know, by the letter of the law, but you know, then there's also that, okay, you know, even though it was by the letter of the law, this penalty needs to be redefined because it was completely, like you said, completely changed the tenor of the game as soon as Shaun Wade was forced out.
I mean, not only to give Clemson new life in the drive to which they went down and scored their first touchdown and gained momentum from that. That aside, you're looking at Shaun Wade, and he's got a very specific role in the OSU defense that no one else can fill, and no one else in the country fills it as well as he does. And he's responsible for a lot of those short game, those short routes and stuff like that. And he's constantly running out to take the back out of the backfield. He's picking up slot receivers. I mean, he's doing these things that you need to do well against Clemson. And without him in there doing that, I mean, this very same drive after he was thrown out, his replacement gets a pass interference call. So it was enormous, not just for giving them the first down. It was enormous that Shaun Wade was no longer in the game, and it really makes you go. It's really one of those moments that I think took Ohio State aback. I think that they were a little bit shell-shocked from that decision. I think they were on their heels a little bit after that for a little while, and of course Clemson, making the most of it, got on a roll, and they hadn't had anything going for them in that game up to that point. We could probably fill 2 hours just talking about the targeting call, but I don't want to do that. I think that I've made my thoughts on it known in my Grumpy Old Buckeyes, the Grumpy Old Buckeye column, in that I think that it's a garbage penalty to throw a kid out of a game when there's no intent to injure. I don't think that there's any way that a rational human being can look at that play and say Shaun Wade was trying to hurt Trevor Lawrence, because Trevor Lawrence ducked his head at the last minute, and Yeah, the angle of you can look at the angle of Shaun Wade's helmet and say he was leading with the crown of his helmet, but it's your head is by nature kind of forward when you're running forward. Nobody that I know of runs forward at full speed with their head behind their shoulders. It's always in front. So, I mean, you would look pretty goofy if you did. So it's the spirit to me of this rule, Chip, is this. It is intended not to eliminate completely all helmet-to-helmet contact. That's never going to happen in this kind of a game. It is designed to take out dangerous and dirty hits. And while this ended up being a potentially dangerous hit, it was the offensive player that made it potentially dangerous. Here's a guy he's probably got 6 inches height at least on Shaun. He's got probably 40 pounds, I'm guessing. Maybe not quite that much. But Shaun Wade's coming in. He knows he's got a big guy. He's got to hit him hard. He's got to try to get him down. Guys bounce off of this quarterback. And at the last second, the guy ducks. There's nothing at that point he could do. Once he's already into his motion, and he didn't launch, he didn't leap off the ground like we saw in the LSU-Oklahoma game, the Oklahoma player did. You can look at it and say that it's targeting because it looked bad, because it did look bad. If you watch the play, it looked like a violent hit. But it's a football hit, and I think that this is one of those ones where I think you let the play stand as called because it's got to be clear and obvious. And to me, it could go either way. Granted, I'm biased, and I'll cop to that. But the other thing about this is, and we might have something someday that people refer to as the Shaun Wade rule, to throw the kid out of the game when there was no intent to injure it hurts the team, it hurts the kid, it hurts the game. I mean, the game was affected by it. And I don't agree with it. And I think that there needs to be 2 tiers of this targeting. If you're going to have targeting, there's got to be you tried to hurt the guy, you're out of here, or this is an unfortunate situation where you're getting the penalty, but you're staying in the game.
I agree with everything you said. I think it's long time. Unfortunately, Ohio State will not be the beneficiaries of any kind of a 2-tiered penalty approach. But one of the things that, we've talked about this before, and I know that other people have said, kind of almost like the idea of, like within soccer, the idea of like a yellow card, red card type of of an approach. As I said a moment ago, Ohio State, it's too little, too late, for Ohio State to be the beneficiaries of that. But I definitely think that something needs to happen because it's. Shaun Wade is one of many examples of a well-intentioned idea of protecting players and their safety, but he is evidence of somebody who he was not, as you said accurately, was not trying to injure or hurt Trevor Lawrence and was disqualified from a game due to official interpretation.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. I think that if Trevor Lawrence doesn't duck like that, and I have no proof of this except for I've watched the play about 200, 300 times. I think that if Trevor stays upright, that Shaun Wade's face mask hits him in the chest, and we're not even having this conversation.
Right.
And the play is over. Now, here's the other thing. Shaun Wade gets ejected. It's 15 yards. It's a Clemson first down. There was a very clear and a very obvious illegal hands to Chase Young's face on that play.
Oh, yeah.
That did not get called. And that should have, at worst, been a situation where it's offsetting penalties, and it should have been a replay of 3rd and 5. Oh,
I agree. It was the mere fact, like you said, you watched it exhaustively. The fact that Chase Young had to suffer through, hands to the face and not get any kind of penalty called on the Clemson offensive lineman. It like I said, I mean, it's just, it certainly, it just seemed as though that the officiating left a lot to be desired, in so many ways.
Yeah. This was something I haven't noticed from any other game quite like this. I mean, any game. I mean, the old adage that you can call holding on any play is pretty much true. I don't think you can call illegal hands to the face on any play. And I think it's a lot easier to see. But I think Clemson's line did it more than I've seen any OSU opponent do it. I don't think they were holding much. I think they were doing a lot of hands to the face. And I saw it happen to Jayshon Cornell on a long completion for a first down on a play where Josh Proctor busted coverage, came off his man. And Chase Young had a couple of them. So I think there was some stuff that they were getting away with that they shouldn't have been. I'm not saying that cost Ohio State the game. I'm not saying any of the officiating cost Ohio State the game. I've already talked extensively about settling for field goals. But I do think that, in any close game, calls can be a contributing factor, especially critical ones. We've already talked about one. We're going to talk about two more before this podcast is over. But Clemson comes down and scores ETN with an 8-yard run, where it looked like pretty good play by Jordan Fuller on the outside, but his inside linebacker help overran the play, and ETN cut inside, scored, and made it 16-7 at that point. Then, interestingly enough, the Buckeyes, who had been so really aggressive coming out of the gate, got a little bit more conservative. And I think right around this point in the first half, they started to do that. Dobbins had a no gain rush on the first down. Then there was a completion to Garrett Wilson for 9 yards. So now you got 3rd and 1, and just a Dobbins Dobbins then gets a carry where his ankle is in the grasp of the defender, and he's not going down because he's fighting for that yard. And actually, he ended up losing 2 on the play, but he's fighting to try to get back to the line of scrimmage. He gets hit again, and you have your second game-changing play. Really, this one's not an officiating play, but J.K. Dobbins getting hurt certainly changed the game.
Yes, I mean, and that was something that Ohio State had to deal with for the remainder of the game. J.K. Dobbins, to his credit, did everything he could to kind of power through that discomfort and pain and nagging injury, but it certainly played a contributing factor to his effectiveness or lack thereof for the remainder of the game.
And I don't want to downplay the fact that I'm not going to sit here and say Clemson didn't have injuries as well. T. Higgins, who sat out much of the first half, had a miraculous recovery from the concussion at halftime. He suddenly was fine and came into the game. And Justin Ross had basically every time Justin Ross got tackled, he went off the field shaken up. So certainly they had their own issues in that game, but they were able to contribute through the second half, which was important. And J.K. Dobbins, although he played in the game, was not very effective the rest of the way. He had some success in the passing game, but between the tackles, 4 or 5 yards was a good run for him after that. He didn't have the explosiveness and the jump cuts that you would normally see him have. He wasn't able to rip off any more of those long runs. And, Clemson can say they made adjustments, but that wasn't a full strength J.K. Dobbins they were tackling in the second half. So pretty important. The Buckeyes give the ball back after that 3 and out. And, then Clemson ends up coming down and scoring again. And 16-14. And then at that point, the Buckeyes, again, they came out a little bit conservatively with not much time left. I think Ryan Day got to where he was in that game by being aggressive early, and I think toward the end of the first half he got less aggressive. And, maybe some of that is not having Dobbins because Master Teague was in, and, he wasn't able to maybe have the same confidence in the blitz pickups and stuff like that with Master Teague. So, they just ran Master Teague into the line, threw an incomplete pass to KJ Hill. Master Teague ran on 3rd down, and they punted to end the half rather than trying to get something after the second Clemson touchdown, try to seize that momentum back because you knew Clemson was getting the ball to start the second half.
Yeah, that was probably one of the most distressing areas for me watching the game, is knowing that Ohio State had been so dominant up until the latter portion of the second quarter, and knowing that Clemson now had the momentum and, oh, by the way, they get the ball first in the second half. That was very, very distressing.
Yeah, second half, there was, Buckeyes come out, they're ahead by 2, but then you got a couple of exchanged punts. Again, Buckeye offense without Dobbins wasn't really able to move the ball and stay ahead of the chains. Master Teague wasn't having any success, and I think he's a fantastic running back, but against that quick defense, he's not able to make those quick, sudden moves and changes of direction. He's more of a mauler type, and I think he'll get better, with another year in the weight program. Shed some pounds, put on more muscle, work on the quickness and that kind of thing, the agility, and I think he'll be fine. But he just wasn't the same. And then, Ohio State even resorted to some quarterback runs, and it was, they said Justin Fields was probably 85, 90%, but he really didn't look it.
No, he did not. And, it was the kind of thing where I guess as a fan, I was wondering, all right, all of the pregame speculation, how healthy is Justin Fields? Is this just purely psychological, trying to, throw a scare into Clemson? Is he truly not at 100%? And I think you could say accurately that he was not at 100%. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the offseason is kind of going to do wonders for Justin Fields and getting his sprained MCL back to 100%, but unfortunately against Clemson, you could see that he was not nearly as elusive or mobile as we had seen earlier in the season.
Right, and that bulky brace, is a hindrance for him to run in, and he didn't have the explosion in his legs that you would like to see. So Clemson comes back down and scores to take its first lead of the game, 21-16, on a short pass to Etienne, who runs for 53 yards in all. And then there you go. You've got Clemson now on top. All the momentum, 21 straight points. Buckeyes come out, get one first down, and then punt it again. And then Clemson has to punt it. And then Ohio State has to throws an interception. And we haven't seen too many of those. Justin Fields, only his second interception of the year, stared down his receiver a little bit on that one. Yes. Yeah, we started to – It kind of felt as though that Justin Fields was, I've had concern about him staring down his receivers, and unfortunately Clemson was able to capitalize on that on Saturday night. Yeah, he doesn't always do it, but a good defense will make you pay for doing it. So anyway, they get out of the third quarter with Clemson leading 21-16. Ohio State, its first scoreless quarter of the game. Not really ideal, but that's just the way it was. Anyway, the game at this point was really up in the air. It was really touch and go, and I think somewhere in there, I'm missing the punt block, right, or the punt roughing the kicker call. Yeah, we can bring it up now. May as well. Okay, no, it's coming up. It's coming up on the next Clemson scoring drive because that's what kept it alive. But so the Buckeyes actually make it back into the lead of this game in the fourth quarter. And this time it's Justin Fields to Chris Olave. And this was one of those drives where you just felt like Ohio State has to get something out of this drive. They have to get something out of this drive. And they get down to the Clemson 23, and it's 4th and 1. And from there, it's a long field goal. And at this point, Ryan Day doesn't want any more field goals. So a really gutsy call to go almost, not quite, but almost wholly Buckeye in that we only need a yard. We're going to sell the run, and then we're going to throw it into the end zone. And everything worked out, and Chris Olave scores. Yeah, I mean, there are gutsy calls, and then what you saw Ryan Day do, when the stakes are high, and I mean, just sitting there watching that, it certainly was up there with like the Holy Buckeye call, from many years ago at Purdue, but the stakes were even higher this time because this is actually, for the right to continue on to the national championship. So Credit to Ryan Day and to Chris Olave for coming up big. Yeah, indeed. It was It was a really gutsy call, and it was a pattern and a throw that we would see again in this game.
Yes, unfortunately, not with the same positive.
Not the same
results.
result. Not at all. Okay. Anyway, the you know what? I did miss the. It was the third Clemson touchdown. I missed the roughing the kicker. It was at that point it's still 16-14. Ohio State forces a punt. Ohio State's going to get the ball back in pretty good field position, and a lot of people have been pretty sour about this decision to try to block the punt. Now, if you are an aggressive coach, and Ryan Day showed in this game that he was an aggressive coach, especially early in the game, you are going to, from time to time, try to block punts. And the thing about when you go after them, it's not always situational. It's sometimes getting the look you want. You have scouts, you have film sessions, you study what the other team does, you look at what they're doing, and if you get that look and you think you can get it, that's when you call your punt block. It might be in the first quarter, it might be in the fourth quarter, but when you get what you think you can exploit, that's the time you call it. And I tell you, Chris Olave came so close to blocking that punt.
I liked how Tom Orr referred to it. He's like, it almost is like a wormhole that came out of, like how did that ball get through there? Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, if you're gonna play aggressive, and it's the kind of thing where that's when I think the fans, were lamenting the fact that, okay, well, went for the block and then got the penalty, and we could debate that. Hey, I certainly respect the fact that, all right, the situation in terms of where they were, I can understand the logic of trying to do that. So I'm not going to be critical of Coach Day for calling it, because being aggressive is what got Ohio State to where they were on Saturday night.
I can honestly not tell you, Chip, how many times I've seen a punt blocked when the other team is punting from like inside your territory. It's like almost all the punts I've seen blocked, teams are deep in their own territory.
Right.
And so it seems to be when coaches go for that. And if Olave makes any contact with the ball, it's not roughing. If Ohio State could scoop and score there, a big, huge momentum shift, already leading the game, and really reestablishing dominance in the game. But unfortunately, it didn't happen. We could debate 5 versus 15. I know a lot of people think that's a 15-yard penalty every day of the week. The way the rule is written, I should say the way the rule has recently been applied is if you hit the plant leg, it's typically the 15-yarder, or if you really just smash into the kicking leg. In this case, the punter was protected. He was off the ground. He had both legs up off the ground. He kind of grabbed Cam Brown as he's coming into him and kind of really sold it. I could definitely see it being called a 5. I'm not going to argue too much about it being called a 15, but I think that was one that it wouldn't have shocked me if they called a 5-yarder there.
No. I mean, that's the thing. It's like I seem to recall several years ago in the Sugar Bowl, Alabama, it was kind of like the same thing. And, like they made contact with Cam Johnston, and Ohio State did not get a 15-yard penalty. They only got a 5, and Urban Meyer decided to launch his headset out of frustration. So it definitely, I agree with you. I think it could have certainly been the 5-yard versus the 15.
Yeah. But kudos to the punter Spires for selling the hell out of it and getting the 15-yarder. All right, yes. So back to the fourth quarter with Ohio State in the 23-21 lead, and the Buckeyes get the ball, and this was a masterful drive for the Buckeyes until the end, until it wasn't. Chip, this was the Buckeyes took over the football and drove down the field and held on the ball, ran a ton of time off the clock. They started the drive with 9:59 on the clock, left to play in the game, up 2 points. They took 6 minutes and 52 seconds off the clock and moved 50 yards. And again, J.K. Dobbins bad leg. Again, this could have cost the team the game. Could have cost the team the game. He's swiped that from behind, a desperation swipe. Again, gets his foot. He falls down 4 yards short of the first down. The Buckeyes then go with a 1 yard loss on a run and a complete tunnel screen. And I think at this point a lot of people thought, oh, he got conservative. I think Ryan Day expected to get a certain look through the tunnel screen, thinking it was the right call for that look. He didn't get the look he expected. And so Austin Mack was basically a 1 yard, I think, a 1 yard pass reception. Ohio State has a 4th and 4 at the Clemson 39. It's too far for a field goal. You could at this point go for a 4th and 4, but your defense has been playing pretty well. So here's the next decision that I think a lot of people are questioning is the punt. Now at this point, again, the defense has played pretty well all game. You've held a very good Clemson defense to 21 points. 14 of those have come after drives were extended by penalty. So you're feeling pretty good about your defense. You get the punt that you want. It's inside the 10. Heck, it hits the return man and almost ends up being a turnover. And then Clemson goes 94 yards in 4 plays in a minute 18 and scores to take the lead.
Now that was one of those things that was very, very distressing and disconcerting, is the defensive performance or lack thereof. Like you said a moment ago, they had been playing well, but it just seemed as though at certain times on Saturday night against Clemson, the defense just failed to show up when they needed to against a very, very capable and quality opponent.
Yeah. Well, they did pull out some nice plays in that drive. I kind of expected a Lawrence run in there somewhere on a quarterback draw. He did get 11 yards on one. The big play was a pass to Rodgers for 38 yards, and another to ETN for 34 yards. So that ended up being the touchdown, and they take the lead, but they leave plenty of time on the clock. And Ohio State comes out with 1:49 to play, and they quickly get down the field. They get down to the Clemson 31 in just 4 or 5 plays, and they're in really good shape at this point. They've got a timeout left. They've got plenty of time. They've only got to go 31 more yards. And Justin Fields drops back to pass. He's got Dobbins underneath, and Dobbins had been huge on that drive with catching the ball. In fact, I think he caught 3 of the 4 passes that got him down the field. And he doesn't go short. He goes long to Olave. And Olave said after the game, he thought that Fields was starting to scramble, so he broke off his route. If he doesn't break off his route, Chip, that's a touchdown, and we're in a much better mood this week. But unfortunately, he broke off the route. The defender kept going, caught the ball, intercepted, and ended the game. And it's 29-23. And I don't want you to think that I forgot the biggest play of the game and the biggest call of the game. I skipped over it on purpose so we could go back and end on it.
Well, I want to give a lot of praise to Chris Olave for saying that it was his fault when in all, I mean, we've talked about it, and I know we're going to go back and look at the biggest play, but Ohio State wouldn't have been in that position to have won the game without the contributions of Chris Olave. So I think it was very admirable. I mean, you win as a team, you lose as a team. I'm sure he felt absolutely heartsick, because, upon first glance, I'm thinking like, why did he throw that ball? Like there was nobody, and then when Chris Olave after the game said that he broke off the route, my respect for that young man has just grown tremendously. I can't imagine how devastatingly horrible everyone felt on that team at that moment. But as we began the podcast, they gave us a heck of a year, and it obviously did not end the way any Ohio State fan wanted it to. And I know we're going to talk about the biggest play of the game here, but it was a terrific season. And I will say this now, and I will repeat it when next season kicks off, and that is the way that this game ended is going to be fuel for the fire. And that, in my personal opinion, I think Ryan Day, I think he is going to be a man possessed. It's going to be, this is where you're going to see, being able to take this bitter loss and use it as motivation to get back to the college football playoff and win it next year, because a lot of the talent is going to be back on this team. I realize, some of these players like J.K. Dobbins, have already made their decisions about their futures possibly in the NFL, but I think Ohio State is definitely going to be a force to be reckoned with in 2020. That's for certain.
All right, well, you never know what will happen from year to year, especially if there's an entirely new secondary and that kind of thing. But that's a podcast for another day. Let us go back to when the Clemson Tigers led 21-16. Let us go back to a Clemson drive where Clemson had 3rd and 19 at its own 20-yard line. And Trevor Lawrence threw a pass out to his receiver, Justin Ross. Jeff Okudah knocked it out. Jordan Fuller picked it up, and he ran into the end zone for an apparent go-ahead touchdown that would have completely turned momentum on its ear at that point. And I got to tell you, looking at it live, I said, man, did he even catch that ball? Because it came out pretty quick. And I was thinking, oh, we're going to see the replay, and I'm going to see that it's obviously incomplete. And Chip, I got to tell you, I saw the replay, and I've seen it a lot of times from every angle they have, and I was wrong at first. It was completely wrong to say it was an incomplete pass. That man had control of the ball, took several steps, had it knocked out, had it fully under his grasp, and they took another look at it and determined that it was an incomplete pass, and that was a pretty big call in a game where Ohio State lost by 6 points.
Well, you're not the only one who has seen that play over and over and have concluded that the officials that evening, the replay officials, made the wrong call. It definitely, like you, when it happened live, I remember thinking, okay, that's an incomplete pass. Just from the angle, the camera angle. And then as you watched it, as you said, over and over, wait a second, that was a completed pass. And the mere fact that the replay officials ruled it and took the points off the board for Ohio State, like I said, it is definitely one of these things where, the bitterness of Ohio State fans and I can understand why a lot of Miami Hurricane fans are reveling in Ohio State fans' misery and unhappiness. They always point back to the Fiesta Bowl when Glenn Sharp, the call that in their mind should not have happened. Mm-hmm. What Miami Hurricane fans also neglect to mention are the numerous calls that went against Ohio State prior to that play that play never would have happened if the proper calls had been made on behalf of Ohio State, prior to that pass interference. But
yep.
It definitely is the kind of thing where when, during this, what's seemingly going to be a very lengthy offseason, as I said a moment ago, I think this is going to be fuel for the fire. I think this is going to be the kind of thing where if you're Ryan Day, knowing full well that Ohio State, they should have had that touchdown. It was taken away from them. This is kind of where you kind of, I realize it may not, it's small consolation to those players who gave everything they had and thought that they had done enough to win the game. But this is where you kind of say, we have to put ourselves in a position where, poor officiated calls, we have to do above and beyond so that officiating calls that go against us are not as impactful.
Right. And
So
it's the thing is I don't think anybody that's an Ohio State fan would dispute the fact that there were larger factors in this game that prevented Ohio State from winning. It wasn't, I don't think any of us are solely saying that the officials cost Ohio State the game. I think there is plenty of blame, not only with the coaching staff, with the players not executing, but I think when you play a game that's very evenly matched and every talking point in the game is about the officiating, I think there's something to be said for the fact that, we're not blaming the officials, but they played a pretty big factor.
Oh, yes, they did. I mean, that's without a doubt. And, the mere fact that, I mean, it certainly felt as though, when, for all of the, what is it, like tinfoil hat conspiracies, whatever, like how like the fix is in, like about where the officiating crews were from and who benefited. It's one of these things where you have to just kind of, bite your tongue and, okay, I'm not saying that it definitely, that they were completely against Ohio State from the onset, but we've talked about a number of other calls besides this one being so egregiously wrong that it makes you wonder, kind of, what does Ohio State have to do to break through the national narrative of how the SEC and ACC are dominant?
I will tell you what Ohio State needs to do. They need to break off and form the Ohio State Network and partner with ESPN.
Okay.
That's exactly what they need to do. Then they will have all the good pub. Everybody will pump them up, and that's how you do it. But no, the optics are bad. We're not saying there's a conspiracy theory, but it's bad optics when the two semifinals are refereed by crews from the ACC and the SEC. These just happen to be two conferences that are partnered with ESPN. The Pac-12 had no dog in the fight, so why wasn't there a Pac-12 officiating crew even for both of these games?
Yeah, that would make sense. Or better yet, how about we have officiating crews from Power 5 conferences? You know what I mean? Even when you talk about
Group of Five?
I'm sorry, yeah, Group of Five. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Like somebody from the Sun Belt, from the MAC, from the American, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, thank you for correcting me, but yeah, you're absolutely, yeah. I mean, then you're talking, okay, they really have no vested interest in the outcome. I agree with you. I'm not disagreeing with you. I think that having the Pac-12 would have been the most logical, based on the stakes, but that's something that, Gene Smith was supposedly understandably livid after this game. And, when you look back on what happened last year in terms of the playoff committee selection, and then what happened in terms of the officiating this year, I mean, it just makes you stop and think, what do you have to do in order to break through?
Yeah, but again, it's bad optics when you've got all of that that combined. And again, we're not saying conspiracy theory, but I'm saying you can make the optics a whole lot better and avoid the whole situation by just doing things a little bit differently, and it wouldn't have been difficult to do. In fact, because the Pac-12 was excluded from the college football playoff, would have been a nice touch to ask their officiating crews to do the games, because again, they've got four teams that they probably want to screw all four equally. So why not? Let's get back to the play. I will go to my grave never believing this is an incomplete pass. A lot of people throughout my timeline were just, a lot of them were turning off the sound because they couldn't take Kirk Herbstreit and how supposedly anti-Ohio State he was being. And I think there were a few calls that I think I was like, come on, Kirk. I mean, there was a throw into the end zone to KJ Hill where the defensive back got there early. It was incomplete. They were calling it a drop, and how perfect the timing was. As well, yeah, he got there just in time to grab KJ's shoulder pads before the ball arrived. But these were the kinds of remarks that were really making Ohio State fans mad. And even Kirk Herbstreit was like, yeah, that's a catch. As he had total control of the ball. It took several steps. There's no way they're going to overturn this. And guess what? They overturned it. The head official, Ken Williamson, after the game, Chip, said that he was asked about the call, and he said, well, that the ball was moving in the hands of the receiver. Now, I don't know what play he was actually looking at, but it couldn't have been the actual play that he was supposed to be reviewing, because that ball was not moving. You know what it reminded me of, Chip, is that, a lot of times when Randy Moss would catch a pass and hold it out because his arms were so long that it prevented the receiver or the defensive back from being able to get to it and knock it out of his hand. And all of those were deemed catches throughout Randy Moss's career. There's never ever been anything that says you need to actually bring the ball into your body and tuck it against your chest. That's not how you have control of the ball. Case in point, there have been many catches where, you see them on SportsCenter top 10 lists all the time, where guys catch the ball between their legs and things like that. There's no rule that says you have to pull it into your abdomen or your chest to have possession of the ball. He had the ball in his hand. He had taken several steps. Jeff Okudah made a great play on the ball, did exactly what he needed to do, and Jordan Fuller made a nice return out of it. And it was an enormous, game-changing call. And again, we're not blaming the officials for Ohio State losing. We're just saying this is one of the major contributing factors is when you lose by 6 and you have 6 fewer points on the board, potentially 7, assuming that Blake Hobbiel doesn't miss the extra point. It's kind of big. And, the Monday morning officiating, if you want to call it that, Terry McCauley, an NFL referee, was very outspoken, saying that indisputable video evidence was simply not there. A guy who's a little bit more biased, perhaps, Big Ten Supervisor of Officials Bill Carollo, also said it was a catch. He said that he hasn't talked to anybody who thought it was an incomplete pass. To reverse it, it has to be really obvious. Also, National Officiating Supervisor Rogers Redding as well said that it should have stood and should not have been changed. And also, Bill Carollo very diplomatically said about Williamson claiming that the ball moved that he misspoke.
Yeah, like you said, you're going to go to your grave, and hopefully that's not for a very, very long time. So maybe, they say that time heals all wounds. I highly doubt that in your case. Certainly doubt it in mine, that, we'll ever get over this one. But it's certainly, I don't want the way it ended to cloud and cast too big of a shadow over what was a tremendous year. Yeah. So that's why like I said, I mean, it's so, like Cat Stevens, as he's saying, the first cut is the deepest. Mm-hmm. This one was. So it's a kind of thing where, by and large, I think Ohio State fans, it was a brutal ending. And I can only say that I am completely encouraged by what I saw in the first year of Ryan Day's coaching, that I have every confidence that Ohio State's going to be back.
Mm-hmm. I think they'll be fine. You just never know how a team will. The talent's there. Will a team be as tightly knit and as unselfish as this team was? I mean, that's a rare thing. I think Ryan Day, if they take on the persona of their coach Ryan Day, I think they will be. But that remains to be seen. Obviously, the 2011 basketball team we thought was a national championship type team, and we thought that was the year they could do it, but you never knew, are they going to be back? And they didn't go on to do anything, to do it and win any national championships after their early exit in the tournament. So you never really know what's going to happen. This was an opportunity. It didn't come to pass, but it was a fun season to watch. It was a fun team to watch and to cover. And I would just like to have seen what would have happened. As I think this team, no other team in the nation knows Joe Burrow like Ohio State. I think that would have been a really incredibly interesting matchup. I don't honestly know who would win the game or who I would even predict would win the game. But I think we were cheated out of a matchup for the ages. Joe Burrow against Ohio State. I think the storylines were just so good there. And I think the entire college football world outside of Clemson suffered because of this.
I agree. And I think trying to find that elusive silver lining is now the entire state of Ohio that was already very partial to Joe Burrow is completely pulling for Joe Burrow.
There's a lot of LSU fans in the Buckeye State now.
Absolutely. So I mean, if anything, give credit to LSU for coming out and showing, kind of what would have been, I'm quite confident what would have been the result if Ohio State had been gifted, against Oklahoma. LSU came out and waxed Oklahoma. I never anticipated it being that dominant, but LSU came out and, now they get kind of what we had feared about having to play LSU is, okay, they basically get a home game against Clemson, and for all of the hype and hoopla around Clemson, I think Ohio State showed, okay, Clemson is not invincible. And I think, my money's on Joe Burrow to add on to his legend. It's a couple weeks away. So I'm sure that there might be, ample opportunity for bulletin board talk between both of the teams, but I'm certainly pulling for Joe Burrow and for LSU to win the championship against a team that, let's face it, it should be Ohio State who they're facing, but it just was not meant to be.
Right. Well, before we completely leave the officiating talk behind, I just want to say to those long-time salty Miami fans to just go back and watch the play again, because Sharp completely deserved a penalty on that play. If you think that wasn't a penalty, you don't know what the rule is or how it's enforced.
Exactly.
And also, go back to before Parrish's punt return that allowed them to force the overtime, and check out that third down play, and check out the ski job on, I think it was Mike Jenkins, on a little out route that he wasn't able to get to because he was being pulled from behind. And that should have been an automatic first down, and we're running out the clock. But, that one at least ended up the correct way.
Yes, it
this
did.
This one did not end up the correct way. Let us go to the numbers, Chip. The onus fell on Tony Gerdeman to make a prediction. He predicted 34-31 Clemson. I chose 38-34 OSU. So Tony wins that one, obviously, because he got the correct outcome. And I think if Ohio State had just cashed in on some touchdowns instead of some field goals, it would have been a little closer to winning that one. And also, I really thought that Clemson would score more. I mean, they only scored 5 less than I thought they would, but still, I did expect a little bit more fireworks out of their offense. Tony's pick to click was J.K. Dobbins. Well, he couldn't have picked a better one there.
No, J.K. Yeah,
he did okay. J.K. He even on one leg, he still did quite well. I mean, he wasn't anywhere near the level he was before the injury. But if you go and look at that, J.K. Dobbins with 18 rushes for 174 yards and a touchdown. He also received 6 passes for 47 yards. easily could have had 2 receiving touchdowns. One of them he dropped, and the other was not his fault. It was a very, very tough catch. I know some people have criticized him for not hanging on to that one, but that was a tough one. You're running directly away from the pass, and you're catching it as a running back as you're going into the end zone. And that's one of those things where I think a lot of people feel like it's a stupid rule that, if you have the ball as a runner and you dive over the goal line, it's a touchdown if you break the plane. And then anything can happen. Literally anything can happen. But if you do it as a receiver, you have to not drop the ball when you hit the ground.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say enough positive things about J.K. Dobbins. I mean, he played with such heart all season, and even in the final moments, like you said, it's like playing basically kind of like on one leg, if you will. He laid it all out there, and he set he went over 2,000 yards for the season, with his contributions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he certainly earned my respect as being one of the greatest running backs in Ohio State history by the way he played, not only on Saturday night but all throughout this past season.
Yeah, no one had ever done that in Ohio State history. He passed Eddie. I mean, just a tremendous, tremendous season. I said this on Twitter earlier. A joy to watch him playing in his college career at Ohio State. And I mean, this year, I like J.K. Dobbins just fine coming into this year. But over the course of this season, he really wormed his way into my heart in a way that few players do, and to the point where I put him in my top 5 favorite running backs of all time, along with Eddie George and Keith Byers, Archie, Zeke Elliott. I mean, he's now on that plateau, that the pinnacle of my favorite guys I've ever watched, and I would not have thought that going into this season.
No, I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you. I think he, all the talk heading into the season was that how he had rededicated himself to playing more along the lines of how he did his freshman year versus his sophomore year, and he certainly showed that and then some.
Gerd took J.K. Dobbins. I took Chris Olave, 3 catches, 50 yards, and a touchdown, and I'd say he clicked. I think he could have clicked a little more if he hadn't broken off his last route. Probably one of the players of the game if he makes that catch and stays on his route and makes that catch. But if a good night for Olave, not as the best we've ever seen, but against that defense, that's a pretty solid night. 3 catches, 50 yards, and a touchdown. Justin Fields was 30 of 46 for 320 yards. He did throw 2 interceptions, his second and third all season. 1 touchdown, 320 yards. You'd have told me before the game, Chip, that Justin Fields is throwing for 320 and Dobbins is going for 174. I'm thinking they're scoring 55 points.
Yeah, like I said, the formula certainly seemed like it was going to go in Ohio State's favor, but unfortunately it was not meant to be.
Trevor Lawrence was the leading rusher for Clemson, and he did a lot of that on one long run. He had a 67-yard run. He ended up with 107 yards rushing, 40 yards on all of his other 15 carries combined. That does include sack yardage, so not bad when you get sack yardage and you still go over 100. He threw 18 of 33, did not throw a pick, 259 yards, 2 touchdowns. So I would say, you got to take the interceptions into account, but I think Justin Fields was every bit as good as Trevor Lawrence, if not better in this game. He also had to play on one wheel. So I think that Justin Fields acquitted himself well against, somebody who's considered one of the best in the game. ETN carried the ball only 10 times and only for 36 yards. A 3.6 yard average. Those are stats that if I saw that before the game, I would have just expected a blowout. The leading receiver for Ohio State, KJ Hill, was 6 catches for 67 yards. Austin Mack and J.K. Dobbins each had 6 catches as well for 54 yards and 47 yards, respectively. Garrett Wilson, 4 for 47. Really spread the ball out. Benjamin Victor, 3 catches, 38 yards. Just a good night for Justin Fields. Of course, the interception The second one really hurt way more than the first one. But it was a really strong performance against a solid defense, and I really am interested to see what Joe Burrow does against that defense now, because I thought for all the things that Brent Venables does defensively and mixing things up and making you guess at where he's coming from and when he's going to come and when he's not going to come, I thought Ohio State's offensive line, which had been pretty bad against the pass protection the last few weeks of the season, especially, I thought they held up quite well. I think Ryan Day did a good job of outdueling him for a lot of that game. I think especially the screen pass was a perfect call that just wasn't executed on the field. I think that he did some other things that were great in terms of catching Clemson with too many men on the field once, and also taking advantage of them looking to the sideline but doing a quick quarterback sneak. I mean, there were some really interesting coaching matchups in this game.
Yeah, Ryan Day, I mean, he has definitely demonstrated a capacity for, let's just say, very creative and very aggressive play calling. And I keep going back to it, but it's true, is that, it just seemed as though, it was just not meant to be. I mean, everything so positively, but the final score did not reflect it.
Yeah. Tony took his pick to click on defense was Shaun Wade. Oops. He might have clicked had he not been sent to the locker room early. And I took Chase Young, who only ended up with 2 tackles. Of course, he lost half a sack on the play that Shaun Wade was ejected on, and he was face masked a few times. But I thought that he did a good job pressuring the quarterback, collapsing things, stringing out plays for other people to make. I thought he played well overall, although he doesn't have a lot of stats to show for it. So I'm gonna call it a click, even though he doesn't have big stats.
I would not have a problem with that.
Malik Harrison was a beast. 6 tackles for him, including half a tackle for loss. Pete Werner, 6 tackles, half a tackle for loss. Baron Browning and Devon Hamilton each had a sack. Tyler Friday had a sack. It was not a bad night for the Buckeyes. I mean, not a lot of teams can hold Clemson under 30 points, and Clemson needed some second chances just to get to that, just to get to 29.
Yeah, very good point.
So that's it for the Fiesta Bowl wrap up. We are. We're hurting. This is a wound, and it's going to take a while to get over this one. It's a painful one because it was there for the taking. You had the better team, but sometimes the better team doesn't win. And when the better team does dumb things like run into kickers and drop passes in the red zone, then you've got a loss instead of a win and a chance at a national championship. But I think that Ohio State showed that they belong there. Not only that they belong there, but I think a great deal of the country believes Ohio State is the better team. They just didn't have the better performance.
I think that's a very good way of describing it. They did not have the better performance. And you're right. I'm hurting. You're hurting. I know the fan base, the players and the coaches, they're all hurting too. It's going to take some time. But I'm confident in Ryan Day to harness this anger, because that's what it is, at how this all came out, and turn it into a positive. Now, I agree with you. I think you never know. Next year, the secondary, as you alluded to earlier, among other position groups, I mean, you're going to have a different team. But I just have confidence in the players that are returning, and in the coaches that are returning, especially Ryan Day, that they are going to truly take this opportunity to learn and grow and build from it. And they're going to come back very, very determined to avoid having this same kind of a feeling once again.
Yeah. All right, Chip. That puts a bow on the season, but of course there's other stuff to talk about, some happenings, a lot of happenings today, Chip. You alluded to this earlier because you like to give the the spoilers without the spoiler alerts. But J.K. Dobbins has already come out and said today, as we record this on Monday night, that he is going to forego his senior season and enter the draft. I don't think there's anything shocking about that. I think J.K. Dobbins came to Ohio State to show what he could do and get to the NFL. I think and a lot of players do that. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think specifically he came in with a plan. I'm going to go to Ohio. I'm going to be a Buckeye at Ohio State University. I'm going to learn from a great coaching staff. I'm going to develop as a player, and I'm going to leave as a first-round draft pick. And I think that I don't know if he'll be drafted in the first round, but I think that any team that passes him up that's looking for a running back is ludicrous.
Yeah, I mean, we have a long way to go between now and the draft at the end of April. I agree with you that if you are looking for a running back, J.K. Dobbins should be your selection in the first round. I have every confidence that he will test well at the NFL Combine and in individual workouts when given an opportunity to do so. But I certainly, running back is one of those positions where, let's face it, I mean, we talked about, giving him a lot of credit. He went over 2,000 yards. That's a lot of carries, that he sustained this year. So why not get paid for it? And he, as I said earlier, I'll just repeat it. He gave everything he had to Ohio State, especially this past season. So I wish him nothing but the best. He will, as you said, he will forever be looked upon fondly by Ohio State fans for his contributions, especially this past season.
I'm going to miss tweeting the Dobby is free GIF on Twitter.
Yes.
Perhaps we'll miss that the most. You said Dobbins gave everything he had, except his senior season, Chip. Except his senior season.
Yeah.
Not to split hairs, but okay. So there's that. Also, we're hearing Shaun Wade will announce his decision on Saturday. Typically, players do not call press conferences to say they're coming back to Ohio State, but it's not unprecedented. Cardale Jones did it, and I believe Mike Doss also did it. But typically, when you say, I'm going to make my announcement, it basically means you're going to announce that you're going pro. So I don't know why you just don't announce it.
I know. But lightning sometimes can strike at the most opportune time. Who's to say? I mean, maybe he'll have a pang of nostalgia and emotion, and but yeah, I think odds are we've seen the last of Shaun Wade, and again, if that is his decision, best of luck to him at the next level.
Yeah, the thing that's interesting about Shaun Wade, and you never want to throw away the sure thing. And right now, he may not be a first-round pick, but he's going to get a pretty good first salary, first contract, and you don't want to throw that away. But I do think that Shaun Wade is the kind of guy who, if he did come back, would stand the most to gain from coming back for one more year because of the fact that Jeff Okudah is going to be gone, and Damon Arnett's going to be gone. That will give Shaun Wade a chance to showcase his outside coverage skills, which is something that is not put on tape for scouts. It's not something that he's shown that he can do in college football. So it would give him an opportunity to really be that leader on defense and to make a lot of big plays or to be that next shutdown corner for Ohio State on the outside. Now, so there's a chance that he could make himself, tens of millions of dollars by coming back. But of course, if there's those people though, that are on the game shows that they say, nope, I'm going to stick with what I got. I'm not going to go for the double or nothing. and it's hard to blame them.
Right. Like I said, I think odds are he is going to the NFL. I'm sure he's done the research, and no matter what his decision, I'm grateful for having Shaun Wade in an Ohio State uniform.
Yeah, it was fun to watch him. The other thing too is that it's probably is going to be a minor factor, but it would be something that I know just me personally I would consider is that's not how I want my college career to end the way his did. That's a really tough way to go out. unfortunately, it does happen that way for some players. I mean, it's probably better to go out with an ejection than it is an injury. So,
Right.
that's something that would weigh on my mind. I would be like, yeah, no, I can't go out like that.
Sure.
Another bit of news today, Chip, is that the Buckeyes landed a tight end for 2021, 3-star Sam Hart, and that, I believe, puts Ohio State currently as the number one recruiting class for 2021 with, still a long way to go. That's not too shabby.
No, it's not. It's not. Like you said, a long way to go. But it was, let's just say it was, some positive news after, kind of, like the glum news of the last few days. It was nice to have that.
Absolutely. There was a lot of bad news this weekend at Ohio State. I mean, there was the loss on Saturday night, obviously. The basketball team laid a huge, huge egg on Sunday up in Cleveland against West Virginia. Probably their worst performance, certainly this year, and in one of the sloppiest games I've ever seen Ohio State play. And this group of Ohio State basketball players I didn't think was capable of playing that sloppy of a game. And credit some of that to West Virginia, but there were so many unforced errors that it wasn't just because of West Virginia. There was I think I saw Andre Wesson throw a pass that no human could physically, if standing on the court, could catch. Like, I'm not it was like he was like, I guess it was intended to be thrown to someone in the corner. There wasn't anyone in the corner, which was the first problem, and it was about 10 yards high and left of that corner. So even Greg Oden wasn't catching that one. I don't know.
I'll take your word for it.
But yeah, you're not a basketball guy. I won't ruin that for you. And also, but one more other basketball note is Kyle Young maybe having appendix surgery, so he didn't have a great day on Sunday on multiple accounts. So not great, not a great thing, but we'll be back. And of course, we should probably tell our readers on the ozone.net and our listeners to the Silver Bullets podcast that we will be back next week to sort of look back and reflect on the season a little bit. Maybe we'll have some more news to talk about. Of course, we'll have Shaun Wade's decision by then. We'll probably have some of the other decisions, many of which we probably can already guess at. But we'll probably have some more official news next week to go over. So you and I, Chip, are going to do one more season wrap-up cast, and then we will probably break until the spring game and do our off-season thing. It's been one of those things where you and I will talk about it. If there's some news where we feel like we need to do a podcast, and God help us if we have to make an unscheduled podcast in the off season, because that's usually not great news.
Right.
So we will only do one if necessary. But you and I will be back for the spring game, and then we'll of course be back in the fall. But we will be back next week for one more from this season. I got to say, Chip, I think this was the second season you and I have been doing this together, and I've really enjoyed doing this with you again.
Oh, I have immensely. I mean, like I said, it certainly, the way that this ended for this season was not the way that you or I would have liked. But yeah, it's been tremendous doing these podcasts with you. Look forward to them every week, and like you said, like kind of going on a brief hiatus, between now and the spring game, which let's pray for, a quick winter, because, as we get closer and closer to the new year, they have not yet announced the date of the spring games. So typically it's in April, but it's something that I look forward to every year.
All right, Chip. It's, I said I've been enjoying doing this with you, but of course, what I meant to say was I really prefer doing it with Tony. So I'm sad to say, Gerd and I will be doing the Silver Bullets next year. No, I'm kidding.
I understand. I know.
I had to harass you a little bit, because otherwise you wouldn't know that I care about you.
I appreciate that.
We don't have any Silver Bullets podcast mailbag questions this week. Unless somebody sent them directly to you, Chip. But our listeners can hit us up on Twitter with the hashtag SBP Mailbag, and ask us anything, and we will answer it on the air. If you have any questions going into this off season, what you think, if you want to know what we think the depth chart's going to be like, if there's going to be any transfer portal stuff going on, and things like that, we will certainly answer those questions. One thing we didn't talk about, we probably should mention before we go, is that Mike Yurcich is going to Texas to take over as offensive coordinator for Tom Herman. So a couple of ex-Ohio State coaches teaming up there. And, Tony and I talked about this last week, that, if you go there, you're really hitching your wagon to something, because, Tom Herman has one more season like he had this year, and I don't think he's there anymore.
You and Tony hit it squarely on the head, and I completely agree with you. I think this is a risky venture by Mike Yurcich, and without knowing anything in terms of what the relationship was like between he and Coach Day, it would just be pure speculation on my part, but wish him nothing but the best, and hopefully he's making a wise career decision.
Yeah, and this is you kind of get the sense that if somebody on the offensive staff has to go that's not that difficult to replace, maybe it's probably him. Like, if you look at Brian Hartline and just the incredible recruiting, the receiving of the wide receivers in the last couple of years, and the development of those wide receivers, and you obviously, Ryan Day is the most important offensive coach, and what Kevin Wilson's been able to do. I think that probably if you're picking your poison, that's where you're going to pick.
Certainly. Yeah, I agree.
Because even Tony Alford has been very good. J.K. Dobbins had a lot of kind words to say about him in his farewell. So, I think that when you have a good program like this, it's everybody's going to want to poach your guys, and so they think that it's part of having a great program, and really a machine-like program is that you continue to find the right pieces to keep it rolling, and then everybody wants to take those pieces away from you, and then you just keep going and getting new pieces to replace them. So. If this year has taught us anything, Chip, it's that Ryan Day knows how to select his coaches.
Yes, and I have every confidence he will continue to do so.
So we'll see how it goes. We are now in the Ohio State football off season. We will not see Jeff Hafley next year. We will not see Mike Yurcich. We know we won't be seeing J.K. Dobbins. We know we won't be seeing some of these great seniors. KJ Hill, who added 6 more receptions to his school record for career receptions in that Fiesta Bowl. Some of these guys that came back and maybe didn't need to. Jordan Fuller. We're going to be missing some guys who have given us a lot of joy over the years. But the great thing about college football is that next group always comes in behind, and you're always like pleasantly surprised to see them making plays in the second halves of games that are out of hand, and then all of a sudden they get their turn, and it turns out they're pretty good. I mean, this guy, this tall, lanky defensive end who wears number 2. His name is Chase Young. I mean, he's out there running around and getting some playing time behind Joey Bosa and Nick Bosa. Now all of a sudden, he's the man, and he hasn't made his announcement yet, Chip. But I'm pretty sure I know what that announcement's going to be.
Right, I agree.
So that will do it. You have anything else you want to add?
No, I wish you and all of our listeners a safe and happy New Year. And look forward to talking about Ohio State football, in the near future, in terms of like a season look back. And let's kind of get an idea in terms of what the future holds for 2020 and beyond.
Yeah. All right, that'll do it. Everybody, as Chip said, have a happy and safe New Year. Listen to our other programs on the Ozone Radio Network. There's the Buckeye Sloopcast on Mondays and Fridays. There is the Buckeye Weekly with Tony Gerdeman and Tom Orr, who do not answer my questions in the post game on Twitter or on Facebook. They kind of Tom reads the questions, and then he ignores the ones that I put there and then reads everybody else's questions, but that's okay. I'll forgive him for that. They got a good program over there, and they're on a couple of times a week, and if you join their Patreon, you can get extra shows because they do extra for their subscribers. So there's all of that. Chip, where else can they find you on the internet?
They can find me on Twitter at Chip Minnick. My last name is spelled Minnicch, and I'm a contributor to the Ozone on the Hazen Cannon section, as well as to Athlon Sports.
Yes, find me, the Grumpy Old Buckeye, on Hazen Cannon over at theozone.net. Never say never. I usually just contribute after games to those Grumpy Old Buckeye columns, but I may have some things that I want to say from time to time, and Tony has been kind enough to allow me that platform if I choose to exercise that. So you can also find my non-Ohio State writing at michaelllikestowrite.com, and my Twitter account is at Mike36fan, and hit us up with your mailbag questions at hashtag SBP mailbag. That's going to do it. We will sign off, and we'll be back next week to wrap up the 2019 Ohio State football season, and just give our overall thoughts, and then catch you guys up with whatever news has broken between now and then, and we'll discuss it in depth and give it our own personal spin. So that will do it for this week. We will sign off as usual. Go Bucks!
Go Bucks!
And go Joe Burrow!